We're reflecting today on your almost 20 years here leading Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, almost 35 with the Catholic Charities USA network. So what's your proudest accomplishment as you are weeks away from retiring?
So thanks, Christy. My proudest accomplishment is not me, it's Catholic Charities and the amazing staff and the difference that we're making in the lives of people wherever they are in addressing their needs. So being innovative, being creative, being compassionate, the staff who are so responsive to the community needs and making such a difference. And having that community support, all the partners, the donors, all coming to the table, wanting to make that difference so that families can succeed and thrive.
Yes, yes. So right now I believe we have staff at about 550, I think is about where we are, over 500. And I know that's grown in the years that you've been here, but effective leadership, what have you learned over your career and especially here as you retire, but what have you learned over the years about effective leadership of teams? And
so first, I've learned a lot about what not to do. I could write a whole book on that. But some of the things I've learned about leadership, number one, it's not about the individual. It's about the good of the organization. Having a clear vision, being clear on the mission, and being able to communicate that really clearly over and over and over again so that people get it, and then enabling people to execute on that vision and supporting them with that. Challenging systems that get in the way, challenging those barriers or those processes that prevent us from getting that vision realized, and then encouraging staff, encouraging partners, encouraging community members to celebrate the victories that they do have, because this is really hard work. And I think it's the key thing with leadership is, first of all, listening and recognizing that, having that humility that I don't have all the answers. And the people say, oftentimes there's a saying that says that when the people lead, the leaders follow. And the best leader is done when the people say, we have done this ourselves. So empowering the community to take that leadership, that responsibility for their own lives.
And the term servant leadership is something that I know nonprofits tend to use, faith-based especially. I think it's used perhaps in for-profit, but do you consider yourself a servant leader, and what does that mean to you, and how does that work in an organization?
So that's a great question. I think the definition of me as a leader is for other people to say. Do they experience me as a servant leader? Do they experience me as having that heart for them that is about service to them? That's my desire, my hope, that I can do that. But it's really about, are people experiencing that? So one of the things that I've learned is there's a difference between intention and impact. And I may have good intentions, but if the impact is not that, then that's not helpful. So making sure that the impact of my actions are something that are inspiring, are encouraging, are building on the strengths of the team. Mm-hmm. And that way, then I could be a servant leader.
Collaboration. I wonder how many times we've all heard you say that word in speaking to us, and saying it because it was part of the day-to-day operations of Catholic Charities and something that you found to be valuable and successful, not only in recent years, but also I think fairly early on with Franklin McKinley Children's Initiative. And so talk about the collaboration, why that's been valuable, why it's been successful. And I forget what you say, don't invent, I forget.
Don't duplicate, collaborate. So that's my mantra has always been for the last 35 years, don't duplicate, collaborate. Because one of the issues that we see is that no organization, no individual by ourselves can solve poverty, solve homelessness, solve hunger, solve mental health crises, right? It really does take a village. It takes all of us. I learned that in the early days when I was in Oakland with the Loma Prieta earthquake, that we needed coming together with Red Cross, with United Way, with health systems, with the parishes, interfaith, disaster response groups, as well as Catholic Charities, being a key player in all of that. So build on the strengths of each organization and have them come together, whether it's the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector, and the community. We saw that very successfully here, and I'm really proud of it, is the Franklin McKinley Children's Initiative, our partnership with the Franklin McKinley School District, the neighborhood, all of those organizations coming together to help the children and the families in this one neighborhood, in this one school district. And that really makes a difference when it's especially engaging the community and it's community led. Everything we do at Catholic Charities is done through collaboration. We can't do it any other way. So it's key to our success.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Franklin McKinley Children's Initiative? I think there was a 20-year anniversary, perhaps?
15, yeah. So this 15. Is our quinceañera. It's our 15-year anniversary. And it came about because the superintendent at Franklin McKinley School District saw the issue of the needs of the children and the families. And we saw the needs in the neighborhood, trying to break the cycle of poverty. And it came about through another collaborative called Step Up Silicon Valley, which was our attempt to help break the cycle of poverty using a rubric of community collaboration. The one place that we saw that it was possible to make a difference was in the Santee neighborhood in Franklin McKinley School District, using the Promised Neighborhood model of cradle to career, all without federal funding. We did it with basically, I'll call it the stone soup model. Everybody put in a little bit of the resources that they had to make that difference, whether it was the city, the county, First Five, the Packard Foundation, the school district, and Catholic Charities and other partners, making that difference in the community by all coming together. And that's lasted 15 years. Generation has changed.
Do you think people see Catholic Charities as a leader? Obviously, our reputation as to who we are and what we do has to be good in order for people to want to collaborate with us. But do you think people look to Catholic Charities to lead initiatives and to be the leader and to be at the forefront of anti-poverty initiatives in Santa Clara County?
So one of the things that I learned recently from a third-party consultant is how other people perceive Catholic Charities externally and the value of Catholic Charities. Number one, people see us rooted in the community, that we're from the community. Our staff come from the community. Many of them were clients first, then volunteers, and then they became staff and became leaders. So we're rooted in the community. We're trusted. We're a trusted partner. We do what we say what we do. And people see that day in, day out. We're here for the long haul. We're not, here today, gone tomorrow. We're going to be here in the community. Because we're sponsored by the Catholic Church, which means the church is here. And we are the social service, social justice arm of the church. So we're trusted in the community as being that trusted provider. The third piece is that people see us as stable. And so being financially secure, then they say, okay, we can trust that they're going to be around, that they have the internal capacity, the financial capacity, that we're large enough, but also flexible enough to respond to the needs. And finally, we're innovative. So people see Catholic Charities willing to take risks, that it's, through Step Up Silicon Valley, or for advocating for things like Measure A or Measure E, or increasing the minimum wage. We're willing to take those risks, supporting immigrants and refugees, and innovating and trying to find new solutions to poverty, whether it's through Step Up Silicon Valley or the Footsteps initiative that we're doing now. That's that trusted partner, that's stable, that's innovative, that's rooted in the community. That I think that all that leads to the potential to be a leader in the community.
pandemic, that was a Herculean effort that unfolded very, very quickly, not just for us, for everyone. And we really, we did a pivot, talk about the pandemic pivot and sort of how we stepped up and really utilized all of the agency's expertise and flexibility in disaster response to really help so many hurting people during that pandemic time. Talk about that response and
So one thing a lot of folks don't realize is that one of the, I call it other duties as assigned for Catholic Charities, is we are the disaster response agency for the Catholic Church. So the U.S. bishops designated Catholic Charities USA as the disaster response agency nationally. And so locally, we're the disaster response for the local Catholic Church. And so when the pandemic hit, as a natural disaster of a disease affecting the entire population, then it's our responsibility to jump in. And I like to say about our staff is we don't run away from a disaster, we run towards the need. We run towards people who are struggling and in crisis. And we did that in this case with, we call it, the pandemic pivot, where we had after school staff the schools had closed down, and they pivoted to provide food distribution when Second Harvest lost all of their senior volunteers who had to shelter in place. And then the parishes stepped up with parking lots that we could have drive-through parking. So we fed hundreds of thousands of families during the pandemic with billions of meals because of this pandemic pivot. We were also able to help immigrants access financial assistance and families access rental assistance during this. Again, through collaboration, by being flexible, by being innovative and responding to the need. And then figuring out, okay, once that's over, then how do you go back to your regular job and in a new reality in this post-pandemic world. So yeah, I'm very proud of the staff and the volunteers and our community partners for the community response to this pandemic.
how has faith guided you in your career? And, you know, when you spoke of the pandemic, it seemed there were times where it just seemed overwhelming. I wonder if faith came into play there, but also day-to-day faith, and also faith when things happen like the pandemic and we have to, we're really tested in terms of what we can do and overcoming limitations and those sorts of things. So it takes a lot of faith to do a job like you do. And how's that guided you?
Yeah, that's true. It does take faith. I also like to say that as a CEO of Catholic Charities, you've got to be as compliant as the best government bureaucrat, as entrepreneurial as the best for-profit entrepreneur, and as charitable as Saint Mother Teresa, all at the same time. But it takes faith to be able to do that, and it's a gift. I mean, faith is one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit that basically keeps me going. And I think for me, it's been because of my Ignatian background that I've studied in the Jesuits, have been taught by the Jesuits, and that sense of Ignatian spirituality of finding God in all things, and everything that I do, all the work that we do, can be a prayer, can be a way of bringing God's reality and showing that love of Christ to the world, and the world in turn being the face of Christ. So those that we encounter, those in need, especially the poor, are the face of Christ. And we as Catholic Charities, as the Pope said, we are the hands and feet of Christ. And so our faith, the faith of the Catholic Church, is really important to what we do. We are a ministry of the Catholic Church. And my own personal faith is really important. That this is where I've found my calling. There's a Protestant theologian, Frederick Buechner, who says, God calls you to where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. Where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. And I found that at Catholic Charities.
you've seen a lot of different political changes nationally since in the 20 years you've been here and beyond. And I know you went to meet President Barack Obama several years ago. So tell me about the meeting with President Obama and how that came about and what that meant to you and how it relates to Catholic Charities USA and their mission.
Right. So Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County is a member organization of Catholic Charities USA, which is our national network, or the National Ministry of Catholic Charities, which does three things. It's direct service, it's advocacy, and it's convening, bringing people of faith and people of goodwill together. And so as part of that, in 2010, it was the 100th anniversary of Catholic Charities USA, which when it formed in 1910, saw itself as the attorneys for the poor, being the advocates, especially for those who are struggling in poverty. And so to celebrate that, we got invited by the White House to meet the President Obama. At the time, I was the chair of the diocesan directors of Catholic Charities USA. And so I joined the other key leaders of CCUSA in the White House, in the Oval Office. And it was really great because Obama basically did his community organizing work with us, asking us questions, listening to us. It wasn't about him. It was about the work that we were doing and how he wanted to hear how we were making a difference and what was important to us. So I was able to share with him a little bit about our work at Catholic Charities, a little bit about the Franklin McKinley Children's Initiative because of his initiative, the Promised Neighborhood approach, and also talk about it is possible to make a change. Si se puede. It is possible that change can happen, but it takes advocacy. So that experience was very inspiring to me, and it's also recognizing that part of our role at Catholic Charities is to be the advocate. It's to engage with the policymakers, not in partisan politics, but to work to change the conditions, the underlying causes of poverty. So advocacy is a really key part of our mission, and I believe we can do more. Here we did, I think, some great work supporting the county on Measure A to get more affordable housing, on Measure E also for affordable housing and homelessness, working on the minimum wage issue, working on immigrant rights, supporting refugees. The policy work really is grounded when we have the legitimacy for that policy work, not because we're a lobbying organization, but because we are a service organization, and it's coming from the community, from the promotores in the neighborhoods who say, we need safety, we need food, we need housing, and we need our families to be supported and healthy and safe. So, so having a chance to meet the president as part of this was really exciting, and I think Catholic Charities has the opportunity to even do more in the future.
And without getting too much into politics, with our current environment, talk a little bit about inclusion and how we approach inclusion. And I know you've said before, we don't help you because you're a Catholic, we help you because we're Catholic. And we talk about serving people of all faiths and beliefs. So talk a little bit about inclusion and how that plays out in our programs and in our mission at a higher level, all the way down to what we do day to day.
Right. So I often talk about Catholic Charities as big C, little c. We're Catholic big C because we are the social service, social justice arm of the church. And we follow Catholic social teaching, and we follow the gospel. We're rooted in the gospel values. The Good Samaritan, Matthew 25, whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me, right? So that's our motivation, and at the same time, we serve people of all cultures and beliefs. Catholic, from the dictionary definition of universal. And so being inclusive is absolutely core to being Catholic big C and Catholic little c. And we're also very diverse. So we're part of this community here in Santa Clara County, which is one of the most diverse communities in the United States. And our staff are very diverse as part of that. we represent the communities because staff come from the communities. And so part of our mission is helping people wherever they come from in a trauma-informed way, which simply means starting with respect and not judging. And so basically being welcome, all are welcome, not judged. And so being inclusive that way, regardless of political beliefs, religious beliefs, whatever the issues are, gender, nationality, immigration status, age, all of that, we're welcoming. And it's based on what the people need, not our restrictions on that.
So what inspiring words do you give us, all of us who've many people have worked for you for many, many years, maybe all 20. And so what do you leave us with as you're kind of looking over your shoulder as our leadership changes for the first time in 20 years at Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County?
That's a great question. So I'm still looking for the answer to the question that I put on my wall at least 18 years ago. What will revolutionize how we care for those who are poor and needy, and how those who are poor and needy can get what they need to live their lives with dignity, and how we can form community to care for one another. So keeping those questions in front of us, I think is going to be important. And I would say, if you want words of inspiration, never give up. You're not alone. You're in God's hands. At the end of the day, you're in God's hands. Catholic Charities is in God's hands. The community is in God's hands. So there's no need to worry or be afraid, because God is love, and God loves us, and empowers us to love one another. So don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid to fail. Take the risk, because in taking that risk, you're encountering Christ in that risk. As Pope Francis says, it's okay to get dirty in the streets, because we need to take the church to the streets. And so keep on doing that. Keep on changing lives for good, and do good better.
Greg, is there anything we didn't talk about today that you would like to say?
So one thing I know that you had asked me about was, what would I tell a college student
Yes.
who aspires to work for a nonprofit like Catholic Charities? And so what I would say to anybody who's graduating from college, or maybe an intern and looking to come to Catholic Charities, come to Catholic Charities.
Yeah.
You will not find a better organization with more passionate, committed staff to challenge you, and where you can learn nitty gritty, but also have a chance to reflect on the work that you're doing within a supportive community, and being part of not just the local Catholic Charities, but being part of Catholic Charities USA, part of Caritas Internationalis, with the global movement of charity from the Catholic Church. So come join us.
Okay, one more question, and I think that's all we have. Our motto is changing lives for good. Is there one person that stands out to you over the years that made an impression on you? A person you encountered maybe that was seeking services, or whose life changed, or who was inspiring? Is there one story that stands out over the years?
So yes, we served a gentleman who had been in the military. He was a veteran. He ended up on the streets. He had ended up with abuse situations, substance abuse, and alcohol issues. And he said to us, because we tried to help him many times, and he was resistant. And then eventually we were able to get him into housing. And he said, one of the things I appreciate most about Catholic Charities is that you allowed me to say no, and you kept the door open. So he said no many times. We kept the door open until he was ready to say yes. And when he was ready to say yes, we welcomed him. And once we welcomed him, he became part of the family. And then he became a leader, and he became a board member of Catholic Charities. So he helped educate the board about the reality of homelessness, about the reality of the difficulties around substance abuse, and the power of Catholic Charities being always welcoming.